a silent room, 2 anomalies, and a simple question that the files never ask out loud. If SCP-096 and SCP-173 share a space, who actually wins? The answer lives in the little lines that make their rules work, and those lines are stricter than legend. SCP-096 is not a hunter by choice. It is a trigger with legs. The only event that matters is a human seeing its face, by eye or by image, after which it runs until the witness stops being a witness forever. When the event is over, it sits down and shakes like a person who hates being looked at. SCP-173 is the opposite shape of fear. It kills fast and only when you do the human thing and blink. Stare and it is a statue. Look away and it is at your neck. The containment math is simple in theory and ruinous in practice. Blink control is the first battleground because 173 needs blindness to move and 096 needs attention to rage. If a person is present, every blink hands 173 a step, and every eye on a monitor risks waking 096. This is not a monster fight, it is a human error race. Blink control also decides initiative. A guard with dry eyes can freeze 173 inches, place long enough to coordinate, but a single reflex blink is a kill switch you cannot unpress. Compare that to 096, where the mistake is not a blink but a glance at the wrong face, and you see why one procedure uses a metronome and the other uses red covers on every screen. Blind zone cameras sound like a cure, but they are a trap for both sides. Cameras cannot freeze 173 because it demands direct line of sight, not footage, so 173 ignores lenses. The same lenses can carry 096's face to a viewer later, which means the quiet review room across the hall is where the sprint begins. Blind zone cameras create weird logistics. If you put the pair in a watch chamber, the cameras help you hold 173 but endanger everyone who will scrub the footage for anomalies. And that delayed danger is exactly how 096 wins a building rather than a room. The best move with screens is to aim them away from faces and accept that you will miss things on purpose. Door geometry decides whether the first contact is a bump or a break. 173 loves tight corners and blind frames because steel posts make human eyes pan, and panning builds gaps. 096 hates edges, but only after it has been set off, at which point doors are paper. If the two meet in a hall, 173 gets angles. If they meet in a corridor under alarm, 096 makes its own hallway. Door geometry also sets the ambush fantasy that tempts every argument. If there are no observers and 173 is free to move, it will try to snap the nearest neck. But the neck in question belongs to something that shrugs off bullets and sprints through reinforced bulkheads when motivated. A neck snap is noise, and noise is not the rule that wakes 096. Pursuit path is where the asymmetry becomes cruel. 173 moves in jumps when unseen and cannot move at all when watched. 096 moves in a continuous line once the face has been seen and ignores being watched. One relies on your eyelids. The other does not care what you do once it is angry. Pursuit path also explains why the fight rarely looks like a fight. If 096 is triggered, it does not stop to select a target in the room. It tunnels through walls to the witness wherever they are. If 173 is present, it is just another object in a sprint line that ends with a person who wished they had not looked down. Containment Swap is the only clever play that gives 173 a chance to touch 096 first. Put them both in a dark box, remove humans, and 173 can move. It will close distance fast and do what it always does. The question is not whether it can reach 096. The question is whether the result is permanent enough to count as winning. Containment Swap fails on contact physics. 173 kills by twisting cervical vertebrae. The files on 096 describe bone resilience and endurance through impacts and fire while it was trying to reach a witness. A broken neck would stumble a human. 096 is not a human. If the strike does not end it, the next second becomes an anatomy lesson with concrete dust. Time to kill is brutal in both directions. 173 can end a human life in less than a blink. 096 can end a human life the moment it reaches the victim, which could be minutes or hours, depending on distance. Against each other, the clock only matters if the damage sticks, and that is where 173's advantage fades. Time to kill also favors the one that keeps moving regardless of attention. The second 096 is in motion, no decision at the door or in the camera room slows it. The second 173 is noticed, it turns into furniture. If a guard panics and looks at the wrong thing, 173 freezes and 096 accelerates, which is a terrible combo for everyone else. Here is the first micro-vignette. A junior tech rehearses blink, calls under fluorescent buzz, counting 1, 2, 3 switch, and stares at a beige head until the corners of his eyes burn. In the next building over, a bored analyst nudges a thumbnail scrub bar and pauses on a frame that looks like a pale face with hands. One job is hard and loud. The other is quiet and lethal. Here is the second. A response team sprints past a steel door with a dark window, hears a wet crack, and locks down reflex. Inside, a statue leans toward the floor. Past the wall, alarms flip to a different color as a distant hallway camera shows motion blur moving like purpose. The team chose the right room and the wrong building. We need a rules twist, and it is this. 096 does not get angry when it is hurt. It gets angry when a human sees its face. That means 173 striking 96 inches. A dark room might not wake the sprint at all, and the only thing in danger for the next minute is a piece of hostile sculpture that is suddenly within reach of a creature that can rip steel. The next pattern interrupt is that 173 does not care about faces. It does not test if you saw it. It tests if you are seeing it. If a person in the chamber watches the pair to keep 173 frozen, they also create the condition that keeps 096 calm, because no one in the room is staring at 096's face long enough to read it like a photo. Both are quieter under observation, but only one is stopped. Some argue that 096 looking at 173 would freeze 173 like any other observer would. The pushback is that 173 has always required a human-like observer with human-like blinking and human intention towards sight, and 096's attention is not stable like that. It hides its face. It does not hold a gaze. When it does move, it does not blink because it does not bother to look. Others say the statue could bend 096's neck and end it before anything else happens. The clearest counter is that 096's destructive path through doors and teams shows load tolerance far beyond a human spine. Even if the first twist lands, you have to bet on concrete fingers beating a thing that tears armored doors when motivated. That is a bet that pays in dust. We need to test neighbors. Against a fast animal that startles, 173 is perfect. Against a gun team that hesitates, 173 is perfect. Against a thing that ignores attention rules, 173 becomes fragile. Against a thing that stops when not triggered, 096 is harmless. Against a camera room that loves freeze frames, 096 becomes a storm. Impact for the world is simple. Pairing these anomalies in failure scenarios teaches the staff where human behavior is the real weak point. Blink protocols are teamwork handcuffs. Media review requires red tape and face blocks. If you do not change how humans look, the monsters do not need to change at all. We now set a curiosity loop. What if a guard is both watching 173 and accidentally looks at a still of 096's face on a nearby monitor? The answer is that both anomalies become their purest selves. 173 stops completely, frozen by the guard's stare. 096 starts completely, uncaring of every stare, racing toward the witness, maybe through 173 on the way. Do not glamorize harm. Focus on craft, logic, and psychology. Now push escalation. Assume 173 gets the first move and cracks 096 once. The sound echoes. No human sees 096's face during contact. The statue resets to stillness when someone opens the door to check the noise, because eyes land on it before eyes land on anything else. In that frozen moment, 096 either lies limp or it starts to rise. Escalation turns on whether 096 needs a face event to fight back at all. The paperwork writes it like a switch, not a personality. If it is not triggered, it endures. If it is triggered, it destroys. Even without the trigger, a sudden struggle in the dark may make it flail hard enough to break anything close, and 173 is always close when it is working. The final act reframes the premise. This is not a versus match with cheering sections. It is a procedures exam where the bad answer gets people hurt in two different ways. Leave 173 unobserved and someone dies now. Let 096's face into the visual pipeline and someone dies later. The winning side is whichever procedure holds longer without asking a human to be perfect. So, who actually wins? In an arena without humans, 173 moves first and hits first, and it probably chips a nightmare. If the damage fails to be terminal, 173 is rubble 2 seconds later. In a facility with humans, 173 freezes under eyes, 096 launches under a glance, and the statue becomes a footnote in a chase that leaves a path of doors like torn paper. The clean verdict is boring on purpose. If 096 is triggered, 096 wins, because it cannot be deterred by attention and will dismantle anything in a straight line. If 096 is not triggered, 173 wins the first moment and loses the second, unless the strike is somehow enough, which the field record suggests is unlikely. The rest of us lose either way if we rely on reflex instead of design. The safer design is clear: cameras that never show a face, teams that never watch alone, blink calls with metronomes and buddy systems, doors that fail toward visibility, not away from it. A culture that treats video review like handling a toxin, with lids and labels and a second person signing the page. If you came for a knockout, the knockout already happened in the policies that exist, because both of these things were studied by careful people who learned to be dull. The monster that wins is less scary than the procedure that fails, and the way to win is to make your rooms boring and your screens safer than truth. In a quiet hallway, a duty officer finishes a shift with dry eyes and a sore throat from calling blink switches, then drops a sealed drive into a bin marked for facial scrub. No one touches the bin until the next team arrives with their checklists. The statue stays a statue. The runner stays asleep. That is a good day. The question had an answer. The answer was that monsters are simple and humans are complicated, and the only way we actually win is by making our choices simpler than our fears. Hold the stare that matters. Hide the face that kills. Pick the mistake you can survive.